I'm going to call the Assembly Public Works and Facilities Committee to order. It's July 15th at 12:10. Mr. Kelly, would you read the land acknowledgement?
We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juneau is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Gunash Chish.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Now that we're complete, Ms. Hendricks, would you note the roll, please?
Noted.
Excellent. Are there any requests for agenda changes? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Were there any requests for changes to the minutes of June 3rd? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. Items for action. Director Koch, item number 2.
All right, thank you so much, Chair Bryson. This first item before you on page 6 is just a request for a fund transfer of a total of $125,000 from 2 existing CIPs to do some work that I really think of as an investment. Because this work is non-invasive, it's non-destructive. It gives us a good view of what our drinking water infrastructure looks like, and that helps us to prioritize. So when the utility and our chief engineer and our streets superintendent all get together to think about what the priorities are for the next year, it really helps to have this understanding of the condition of that infrastructure. The reason I say that I think of this as an investment is, although $125,000 is certainly real money, and we want to be prudent in our use of it. But when you're actually doing work on utilities themselves, that work is astronomically expensive. It is much more expensive than this monitoring work that we're requesting here. So we're just requesting this transfer of this $25,000 from these 2 CIPs, and we request that you send that forward to the Assembly.
Thank you, Director Koch. Are there questions from the committee about the fund transfer? Seeing none, Ms. Euskandis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that the Public Works and Facilities Committee forward a request for a transfer to the full Assembly of $25,000 from W75-068 Douglas Water System Assessment and $100,000 from W75-077 Aurora Vault Removal to CIP W75-071, and I would ask for unanimous consent.
You've heard the motion. Are there any objections? Seeing none, that is so moved. All right, well, let's keep rolling here. Transit Mobile Fare Technology App and Fee. Another app for our phone to ride the bus, Director Koch?
Thank you so much, Chair Bryson. Yes, this one is really about modernizing fare collection. Before I talk about some of the items that we have here today, I just want to make it clear to the public that if people still want to buy their passes, if they want to pay cash when they're on the bus, they would still be able to do that without paying any convenience fee. So those tools would still be there. This is really about modernizing that fare collection and adding an additional tool. I mean, I think so many of us live on our phones for better or worse. This token app is something that's been used by other systems in Alaska. It's used in the Ketchikan bus system. They've used it for a couple of years. It's gone smoothly. The passengers liked it. There wasn't any resistance to it. One thing to note, however, is you'll see on that table that there is a service fee for that technology. There's no capital expense, so there's not a piece of equipment that we have to put on the bus itself. It's like you buy, I tried it out in Token Transit. You could select, I went on the app, I installed the app. If you select Ketchikan and you buy a youth fare, because it's only 50 cents. I did a little experiment. And then you see that you get a ticket, and you get a ticket that you just literally show to the driver, and that's it. So it's not like you're tapping to pay, and we need to have that technology. So it's relatively fast and relatively low expense to install it. It's just that it's an ongoing expense. It's not like our typical sort of capital expenses. There are some, I think, really particularly powerful uses of this technology. And the one that I like the most is fare capping. You'll see that's the second to last bullet here. And I know that this is important to people. I have somebody who I'm very close with who has had challenges purchasing a bus fare at the beginning of the month to buy a pass, because you need to have that money up front. If you work in a service job and you're, what he would do is he would get tips, and he'd use his tips from the end of the night, and he'd pay for his bus fare to get home. Actually, you can wind up spending more money than you would if you had just bought an adult monthly pass. But there's no way without this sort of technology to do, this is a nice facet here. You could cap it. You could say, oh, well, you basically bought enough individual tickets that you now have a monthly pass. So maybe on week 3 of the month, you've essentially hit you bought your, converts to a monthly pass. So I like that a lot, and I know that is something a lot of people don't think about, but it is real for a lot of people, especially people who use the bus. On that second page, you could see those app-based fares, and so for example, just for the adult single ride, if you're paying cash, which you still have the options to do, you could do it for your $2. If you want the convenience of the app, it costs $2.20. So we are proposing, since this is a convenience, that somebody can, and that somebody still has other mechanisms if they don't want to use this, we would propose that the passenger who's using this app would pay those service fees. But we did our best to throw in an estimate of what we think it would cost if instead the Assembly wanted Capital Transit to absorb those fees instead. And we did those estimates based on what Ketchikan is seeing, and we scaled it up for our system. And then the only thing that we really we're only suggesting to eliminate are physical tokens. It's a little confusing because the app is called Token. So that's the app token, and this I'm talking about the physical tokens. Instead of selling these physical tokens, that we would we'd have this 20-ride digital token roll. So it's the same price that you would pay that you would pay if you were buying those tokens individually. Who tends to buy tokens are actually organizations, businesses, nonprofits, and they like to buy like a roll and they give them out to different clients. You can, even when you're buying these digital tokens, you can, even though you've bought this 20-pack, you can give, one to you, one to you, one to you. You can essentially you email the tickets. So it's a pretty savvy technology. And I think the physical tokens are a bit of, when I said at the beginning, we're talking about fare modernization. The physical tokens are a little bit of an anachronism. People lose them, as we all lose anything in our lives. It's getting really difficult to even find the materials to replace tokens. They're just being phased out. So we're trying to make that replacement, make it digital instead. So the actions and the decisions that we're asking for you to make are really threefold. And on that page 8, when I talk about action requested, there's I wanted to get your approval on just using this technology. The second item is, I think, the bigger probably policy call on who pays the convenience fee and the service fee. I'm proposing that be the passengers. And the third element there is the replacement of the physical tokens with the digital tokens. And then whatever decisions you make here today, we would ask to forward to the full assembly.
Thank you, Director Koch. Questions from the committee? Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. You already answered my first question, because if we were going to be passing these fees on to the fare holders, I was I was hoping that there would be the possible alternative to pay cash. So thanks for answering that question already. My other question in looking at the chart, I noticed that we have single ride passes and we have monthly passes. I'm wondering if we've ever considered if there was a market for daily passes.
Director Koch.
Through the chair to Mr. Kelly, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to make it go red there. Yes, we have thought about that. One of the reasons that, and we thought about that, especially with a visitor industry in mind. People might just want a daily pass. The reason ultimately that we didn't propose it here is that there is our cash fares were set in a fare resolution back in 2012 that established the prices and the types of fares, and there wasn't a daily fare there. So we were just trying, then we'd have to, we of course, the assembly could choose to go back to the fare resolution and, open that up, but that would require revisiting that enabling resolution that established the prices and the fare types. So we're just trying to keep things consistent for now.
Thank you.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that. That's super informative, and I appreciated you walking through the memo. A couple of questions. Does Ketchikan subsidize their service fee?
Through the chair to Ms. Hughes Candies, yes, Ketchikan pays that service fee. They absorb it, essentially.
Okay. And then it's been a minute every time I ride the bus, I'm scrabbling to find, I usually beg a friend for $2 because I never have cash. But you talked about how we can buy tokens and the limitation to that. What is our current, if I just want to buy a pass for the month, what are the ways to do that?
Through the chair to Ms. Hughes Candies, those options would still be available to you. You could go to Fred Meyer, you could come to the cash office, you could go to IGA. There are multiple places that you could go to the bus barn. So there are a number of ways that people, if they wanted to avoid using token transit and they just wanted to use our standard mechanisms, they can just go and pay cash that way.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much. I have comments when we're ready.
Okay. So I had two questions myself. I'm sorry, Ms. Atkinson, I don't see your picture anymore, but are you still with us? And did you have any questions about this topic?
I'm still with you, and my questions have already been asked.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Hughes, or thank you, Ms. Atkinson. All right, so my question is, we've heard in the past that Capital Transit only has a 12% cost recovery rate. Is there an anticipation that this new model could increase that cost recovery rate, or are we still going to be looking at the same 12%?
Chair Bryson, thank you for that question. That sort of leads into a little bit of the discussion that we had. I had to pull it out. It was, it was December 19th, 2022 is when we at this PWFC talked about fare-free transit. And at that time, we were looking at FY22 numbers, and what we had reported to you is that we collected $463,883 in fares, and that was only about 7% of our operating budget. I did ask for updated numbers from Capital Transit today. So for FY24, they're quite a bit higher. So we went from the mid 400s in FY22 to in FY24, a total of $619,000 was collected in fares. And I think the reason for that is that that increase is that, of course, during the pandemic, passenger numbers cratered, and then it's just been this kind of slow but steady rise every year that we get more and more and more passengers that are coming back to Capital Transit. I think that's a mixture of what I would have called sort of routine travelers passengers who were using the service before the pandemic, plus I think some more the influence of summer visitors using the system as well. But it's still, and I don't have an analogous, like, what's the percentage of the operating budget for FY '24, but I would still venture it's going to be pretty low. I mean, it's, fares make up really just a minority portion of the revenue for capital transit. It's heavily subsidized by both state, federal, and CBJ dollars.
Thank you, Director Koch. I have one follow-up question tagged onto that. Knowing that we have a digital system now, is there any way that we could increase the fares and then every local has like they could enter in their local address and then get a discounted rate? And so that way, when a non-local is purchasing a bus pass, maybe it's $4 instead of $2. And then when somebody who's local enters in, and they can just enter in their address, maybe as an example, and then they only pay the $2 local rate? Or is there federal laws against there? Is there any way that we could share some of this cost with the tourists that are using this facility, that we don't pass that cost on to the residents that are using that service? Does this app offer any possibility like that?
Thank you for that question, Chair Bryson. There are a few questions in there, so I'll take them individually. I think one of your questions was really looking for ways for visitors and our visitor industry to contribute to capital transit. And I think that our main mechanism for that is through marine passenger fees. So we have asked and we have received marine passenger fees through the regular assembly process. For example, in FY '25, we requested and will receive $1 million in marine passenger fees to help to help pay for this extra service that we have to orient toward the DTC downtown. So that is one mechanism. In terms of your other question about fares, having a particular fare, and then if you're local with some proof, you get a discount, that is not allowed per our federal rules. Part of that has to do with, as I mentioned, public transit in Juneau, like the rest of the nation, is highly subsidized by federal dollars. So you can't discriminate based on where somebody lives, because we do get substantial federal funds.
That completely covered that one. Thank you, Director Koch. Additional questions, Ms. Hughes-Candies?
No, I don't have, thank you, Mr. Chair, I don't have questions. I'm just ready to start talking about it. Okay.
Keep going.
Get going on it. I love the fare capping. I just was riding the subway in New York, and that is nice when you're riding more than expected. I love cash not going away. I think these are all good things. And I love modernizing it because I know I'm not alone in frequently not having cash. So I think there's a lot of good here. I'm really happy that you brought up how low our capture rate is, because I remain interested in looking at fare free and looking at that cost as an assembly and moving forward with that. I guess actually a question is forming, because that being said, this seems like an improvement that we don't need capital outlay for. So I think if it's going to take us, till the budget cycle to go fare free, I don't see really harm in modernizing and making our fare system better. But I would personally move that we subsidize it, because as somebody who is interested in looking at fare free, having the riders pay that service fee, it just seems like the estimate based on Ketchikan's cost is a low enough price to me that I think let the people who are paying digitally have the same fare as the people who are paying old school with cash. So my own interest would be, based on the questions that staff is looking for direction on, would be approving the use of the Token Transit app, having the city pay the service fee, further subsidizing the fare. And even though a tear goes down my face and I'll be hustling to try to find a physical token, approving the removal of physical tokens bygone era. So that is where I'm coming from personally. And then I guess maybe I would ask Director Koch, just from a staff perspective, is it whiplash if the assembly says, yeah, go forward, yeah, get this going, yeah, subsidize this, and then we were to 6 months down the road say, actually, we're just fully subsidizing it? How do you see that fitting in?
Through the chair to Ms. Hughes Candies, we estimate it would probably take us, from the moment the assembly approved using a digital system, a few months to get that, go through the procurement process and those sorts of things. But since there's not a capital component to it, it's a lot easier than most of the projects that we bring before you, because that software already exists and we're just putting it's more of the paperwork in place. And then the communication to the public and the passengers in particular and on these changes. So it wouldn't be a tremendous amount of work, I think, for naught if later on the assembly decided that they wanted to go fare-free.
Thanks, that's super helpful.
Director Koch, I'm going to jump onto that. I like the direction that Ms. Hughes Candies is going in. The other question, let's say that we decide that we don't want to collect the surcharge or have the passengers pay that, but then later on, we really should have charged the passengers for that. That is something that is correctable.
Chair Bryson, yes, that is a change that could be made. I would caution that, in some ways, if we roll it out once and we let people know it's a convenience fee and they're making a choice, they'll sort of accept it. If we roll it out and say there's not a convenience fee, and then 6 months later or a year later we decide there is a convenience fee, we certainly can do that. But I think we'll hear more complaints than if we just rolled it out that way the first time. I think it's just maybe confusing to have mixed messages.
No, point taken. And then last question about, would we give the community like a 1-year time frame to phase out tokens, or have you guys anticipated it would take 6 months to phase out tokens, 2 years to phase out tokens? What kind of time frame would we be looking for that?
So Chair Bryson, phasing out the tokens since they're physical on our part is super easy and super fast. The reason that, as I mentioned, it would take us, probably 3 or 4 months just to get this digital system in place. During that time, we would be communicating to the public and mostly these nonprofit agencies that buy these tokens, and using that time to do a lot of outreach, and then probably giving them some grace period after that. And then at some point, it's pretty easy for us just to take the physical tokens back. But maybe from the time that, let's assume, a full assembly approved this, it's maybe 6 months. We'd give about 6 months of lead time because it would take us months to get the system anyway, and then we'd have some grace period. And I think that's probably a reasonable period of time.
Excellent, thank you for that. Okay, so Ms. Hughes Candies, you started us off with something that almost sounded like a motion to go ahead and replace or start using the app or begin the app implementation and replacing tokens, but have the city pay the 10% service fee and just leave the tokens alone. Is that a good enough motion for you, Ms. Hendricks? All right, Mr. Kelly.
I had kind of a follow-up question.
ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Because I was kind of thinking along a different route. I was thinking that because cash is an available option, and this is an added convenience that we're allowing people, and it's really only like a 10% fee that we're, for most of these. I was kind of going a different direction and thinking that maybe we should allow the customers to pay the fee. But I'm also considering that there are nonprofits that would use this. So I'm wondering, is it a possibility to charge a fee for some, but maybe like if it's nonprofit, maybe subsidize the fee for just the nonprofits? Or would that be too complicated, or we wouldn't have enough information collected to do that?
Through the chair to Mr. Kelly, trying to think about that. I think it would certainly be possible. It would add, of course, some administrative complexity to it for sure. But that's something we could look into.
Thank you.
If I could just include, we are not required to do 40 and 44, say for the adult monthly pass. If we decided that the assembly didn't want to charge the service fee, but yet we wanted all the fees to be covered, it would be very simple for us to just charge the customer $45. That's problem solved. And then where I can see where Mr. Kelly was going with this, do we really want to charge the tax or the convenience fee on like a youth pass? Doesn't make sense. We wouldn't want to do that. But if we just appropriately price them, that could cover the additional costs that we have, so that we're at least not incurring another cost if we just made our fares reflect that. And so everybody paid $45 for a monthly pass, instead of trying to say, if you pay cash, you pay $45. If you do the convenience fee, you just add the convenience fee into the price of the item, and then the problem's solved because everybody pays the same price.
Mr. Bryson, I would only add that this sort of goes back to my comment that I had made about the fare resolution that was established in 2012, and that's when the Assembly established the different classifications of, you get a monthly pass or single one-way ride and the cost for that. If we just made an adult monthly pass $45 for everyone, that would be changing the cost of the cost of the pass for everyone, including people who are paying cash. And that's something, of course, the Assembly can choose to do, but that would require that you would go back to the fare resolution and change it. Part of the reason we structured it this way is that those are the exact, the piece of the revenue that's coming to Capital Transit for a particular type of ride is consistent with what the Assembly said in 2012. And that, for example, let's say an adult single ride, the $2, you want to use the convenience, the token app. So it costs $2.20. The $2 goes to Capital Transit, which is in compliance with what you've told us. The 20 cents goes directly to the company.
Very good. The only last thing that I would include, and what helped me decide that I believe that the city could absorb the convenience fee, is that traditionally the lower socioeconomic levels of society ride the buses. So if there was ever a citizen group in the community that we were not going to pass a cost on to, this would be the group that I would not be in favor of passing a cost on to. Ms. Atkinson, I believe I saw your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add in that I agree with Ms. Hughes-Scandies, and I think that while I understand wanting to try to make it as complex as possible with things like lowering the price for nonprofits and all that, I think it would be a lot simpler to just absorb the convenience fee on the city side. And I share what your concerns about, the people who ride the bus. A 10% increase might not matter for some people, but it could very well for lots of people who do ride the bus. So I think it's in our best interest to absorb that fee.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Any further comments or questions? We have a motion from Ms. Hughes-Scandies that okays the use of the new mobile fare app and the replacement of physical to digital tokens. Ms. Hughes-Scandies has it where the city, or the motion where the city absorbs the convenience fee. Mr. Kelly, did you want to have a vote on that, or did you want to? It sounds like we got 3-1 on that.
I don't have strong feelings on that, so if you wanted to move it by unanimous consent, I wouldn't object.
Go ahead, Ms. Hughes-Scandies.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just for cleanliness, yes, I would restate that Public Works and Facilities approves the use of the app itself. The city will subsidize the service fee for the app, and the replacement of physical tokens is approved to digital tokens. And I would move that the committee forward it on to the full assembly for approval. And ask unanimous consent, which is what he said to say.
You've heard the motion. Are there any objections? Seeing none, that is so approved. Thank you, Director Koch. That moves us on to Floyd Dryden and Marie Drake proposed uses. Director
Yeah.
Koch.
Yes, thank you. So just for anyone in the public who is listening today, just a reminder that the original proposals themselves were part of our last PWFC packet, so that's June 3rd, and that's part of the supplemental, but they're not part of this packet. There weren't any changes to the proposals themselves. We didn't ask for any changes. Just as a sort of the summary of the June 3rd meeting, I had, but prior to that meeting, I had asked PWFC members to individually provide me with your ranking of the different proposals. You did that. I aggregated them into the average for the will of the group, presented those to you, and at that meeting, there were two specific follow-up items that you wanted. The first was that Assemblymember Hugh Scandies asked for a fleshed out proposal, some more information about childcare, since that was a high concern. Deputy Manager Barr, who's here today, he'll come up and he could speak to that, but he worked on that in conjunction with and coordination with AEYC and collaboration with Ms. Hughes Scandies. The second homework assignment, if you will, from that June 3rd meeting was that the group wanted to add a yes or a no next to the proposals, and I think that that the group wanted to reflect whether they felt the proposal was a good use of the space or not at all versus just ranking it. So I sent that out to the group. I have 3 members who responded, and what I had done here, because my proposal for you all to do today is I looked where there wasn't majority agreement. So when there was 2 to 3 no's, you could see the ranking hasn't changed from the June 3rd memo, but I've suggested striking out some of those proposals that were, there wasn't a majority of support. And I think your task today is to really discuss and debate amongst yourselves if you wanted to. There were, as I mentioned in the June meeting, there were some proposals that there was divergence in individual members. So if you want to convince your fellow assembly member that something that's lower ranking should be higher ranking or vice versa, I think it's also your opportunity to either strike more things from the list or try to make the case for retaining. And then what I think, what I would recommend is that after this body as a whole has decided on the ranking and decided on the yes/no decisions, that that would form the basis of a memo that we would present to the CAL on August 5th. In addition, we would be able to provide, so our architecture group would provide some high-level space layout for what we recommend. We haven't done that yet because there are sometimes conflicts with the different proposals, so it would be helpful to know what your priorities are. So for example, I'll take one that was pretty, there was a lot of agreement. So for Floyd Dryden, for example, Tlingit and Haida, they proposed to use like 2/3 of that building. And if the assembly, right now the PWFC has ranked that essentially as 1/2, it's tied. If there was another group who wanted to use some of the space that Tlingit and Haida specifically asked for, when we do our space diagram, Tlingit and Haida gets the space, and we've made that decision because you've told us what your priorities are. So that is my recommendation for this group. And I think that it's important to move it forward. I would strongly recommend that you move it forward today, because I think the longer those buildings remain in flux, the more questions we're getting from both the proposers themselves and the general public.
Thank you, Director Koch. What outcome would you like to see from our discussion here?
So the outcome would be either a ranking that you all agreed to, and that could be the ranking that's here, or if someone wants to convince somebody else to swap, I see the outcome being we have a final ranking that PWFC agrees to, and agreement on which proposals should be excluded. And so the ones that, for example, that I have here, based on the feedback I've received from PWFC, if there were no changes, for example, what would go to the COW on August 5th would not include those struck out proposals.
Excellent. All right, questions from the committee? Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A little bit of a clarification on how you're imagining the process now in this space diagram when you get to the cow. Good example with clicking a heighted being 2/3 of the building. If you see it at the top, you're going to diagram it so that they take up 2/3 of the building. Just so I fully understand, to be clear, there are 5 people who aren't here. Well, the mayor's in the back, but we have 5 people who haven't weighed in truly yet, which would be the majority of the assembly. If they disagree with how the Public Works and Facilities Committee has ranked, and I'm going to just kind of remind us to be loosey-goosey because this is a weird process and I think you're doing a great job, but it's really, it's a strange one, and we do need staff to be able to get to where you can say, hey, these buildings are already full as you're telling us you want to use them. But the other 5 members could say, oh, we don't want the big one. I don't think that's going to happen in that case. But, you know, we want these 2 or 3 from the bottom, and we want to see a diagram of that. Is it your intention at the COW to really bring this is what you guys had for 2 meetings at Public Works, so I'm going to diagram it just with this list, and I'm including this list as it was ranked so you can see how they got there, and really just one space diagram? Am I picturing that right?
Through the chair, Ms. Hughes Gandes, you are picturing that correctly. And I agree, of course, the full assembly can make a different decision that PWFC makes. But I was thinking about a way of, PWFC sort of workshopping this idea and trying to bring something to the COW that's a little bit further along. Now, if on August 5th, if the will of the COW says, no, we want a different ranking, you threw off proposals that we think really need to be included, then we could always go back and then bring to a future COW a different space layout based on the decisions and the guidance that we get from the COW at that time. So I do see it as having the potential to be iterative. It's just mainly about trying to some extent, having a straw man out there that people can react to and refine. I think there'll be certain this is going to be an iterative process, but I think we just want to get started.
Thank you, Director Koch. I too also saw this as more like a suggestion that we're going to make to the assembly, and then they're going to let us know how they feel about it one way or the other. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. It seems that most assembly meetings seem to be a broken record about parking. So I guess I was kind of looking ahead to today's COW packet, and in there actually on the last page of the COW packet, there was a memo from the manager basically saying that with all the shuffling that we've moved people into the Marie Drake building now, there are 32 spaces that we're using, and there's about 8 spaces that would be used by the Augustus Brown pool, leaving about 9 spaces for the remaining users. Would those 9 spaces be enough for, let's say, maybe the top 3 organizations on the Marie Drake list? So that would be, or I guess maybe, would that be enough for the planetarium and AEYC, I guess?
Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kelly is correct. Parking is the limiting factor at Marie Drake. We've known that'll be the challenge. So a couple of thoughts in answer to that question. We currently envision the CBJ office space use as temporary, a year temporary, but temporary. So eventually those parking spaces would free up for permanent uses. But in the interim, Mr. Kelly is correct. The significant majority of them would be used by CBJ staff. Maybe I'll stop there and see if that gives more questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barr. So we know there's not enough parking. Further questions about it, Mr. Kelly? Comments, questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Barr. Unless you have additional information that you want us to weigh in on or contemplate about passing these two suggestions on.
Mr. Chair, I might just note for the benefit of the committee that the memo in my packet, or my memo in your packet, notes that the childcare piece, AEYC submitted one proposal for their services and childcare, and in talking with Executive Director Scheibler and other AEYC staff, it is reasonable for the committee and ultimately for the Assembly to think about AEYC's proposal as two separate proposals. One for AEYC staff, of which there are about 15, for their office space, and then a separate proposal for a child care center that AEYC would help to facilitate. So AEYC would provide technical assistance. We and AEYC, CBJ and AEYC would provide technical assistance and RFP services to get that child care center operational in Marie Drake under that secondary proposal. There's also a comment in my packet that should that be the committee and ultimately the Assembly's direction, and should that come to fruition, it would be a question that we would pose to the Assembly eventually in that process would be, do you want to see a CBJ staff preference for those childcare spaces, because you as the Assembly would be subsidizing that new childcare center in the sense of utility costs and other related operational expenses associated with the building. So not a decision point for today, but maybe a bit of foreshadowing if that's a direction that you ultimately choose to go down.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. All right, we're going to spend some money today. All right. Mr. Kelly.
Hugh, I forgot, I did actually have a follow-up to that. So to my initial question. So would those 9 spaces, you said it'd be a limiting factor, parking would be a limiting factor, but would those 9 spaces be enough for AEYC's 2 proposed uses and planetarium use?
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Planetarium use is a little bit tricky, and I suspect that it would, the planetarium's answer to how much parking they need would be dependent upon what programs they have going on at any given point in time. So for the sake of evening and weekend programs, I would be much less concerned about parking availability specific to the planetarium than I would about weekday programming. The parking, as you mentioned, 49 total spaces are allocated to Marie Drake, 32 of those temporarily used by CBJ staff, more than 32 if you decide to go forward with a different one of the proposals on the list, which is relocating facilities maintenance. So I'm painting a very complicated picture of parking, right? Another complicating factor in there is that it is possible to add about 13 spaces to Marie Drake with what we think would be a relatively minor construction project, but we know how those can kind of evolve into relatively non-minor construction projects. But that's the long answer. The short answer to your question is no. 9 spaces is not enough, or even add in the Augustus Brown spaces, still not enough. So the AEYC office space proposal, they have 15 staff, 15 parking spaces, right? Like that's pretty easy. The childcare piece, childcare requires less parking, right? Kids don't drive, but you still need enough parking spaces for all of the employees. And then there's a regulatory, I think it's 1 parking space per 10 children, and that's for the sake of parents and parent drop-off and visits and that kind of thing. So we would have some work to do.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. I'm just going to recommend that the committee focus today on what we're passing forward to the Assembly. If we try to solve individual problems like parking for any of these situations, we're going to fall into the weeds just immediately. The question in front of us is, what list are we passing on to the Assembly? Is that correct, Director Koch?
That's correct, Chair Bryson.
Ms. Uscandies, do you want to take a crack at what we're passing forward?
Sure. I will start by, or thank you, Mr. Chair. I will start just by noting, I do think it's important for context, so I'm going to keep beating the drum. If parking is your drum to beat, I'm going to keep beating the drum of process for this because it is a weird one and I do think it's iterative, but I just want to point out we're just only now halfway through July and those buildings were only recently vacated by the schools themselves. So I think it's okay for there to be questions from the community, and I think it's okay for both the proposers and for people to want to know what's going to happen. But I just want to caution us we want to keep moving things forward, but I want to caution us from rushing to where we jam a bunch of things in there and then find out that maybe it wasn't the best decision. Again, I'm not surprised that people want to rent from a very dependable government that has to rent at certain rates. That's not surprising to me at all. And yet I know that the Assembly wants to get people in there so they can help pay for the maintenance and upkeep. So I would propose that the lists as they are currently ranked is what we pass on with the deletion of what you have proposed to be deleted. And I would just request that when it goes to the cow, that the full ranking list goes, including those that we remove from the list. And then let that space diagram give something for the cow to react to. So that would be my recommendation, and I would ask for unanimous consent if everyone understood it.
To clarify, Ms. Uscandies, we're going to pass on this current ranking as we have it with the deletions, but there will also be a final list at the end that will include everything, including the deletions. So the Assembly will be able to see what we proposed to move forward and what didn't make the cut. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you, sir.
Everybody sees that? Ms. Atkinson, do you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, we've heard the motion. Are there any objections to that motion? Seeing none, that is so approved. We have a list. Item for action number 5, compost facility procurement. Thank you, Mr. Barr. Director Koch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is the follow-up, another follow-up from our June 3rd PWFC meeting. And that question that I posed on June 3rd was really a process question. How do we want to get to an answer? And there was interest from PWFC in getting a recommendation from JCOS. JCOS did not want to make a recommendation regarding procurement methodology. So I think that, and that email is in this packet as well. So I would ask PWFC to provide some of that guidance. And then at a really, really high level, there are a few things I wanted to remind, everyone who's listening to this meeting. We're talking about the money from the congressionally directed spending. That's about $2.5 million. It is not enough money to build a facility. We had talked about a facility in the past because we were also pursuing another federal grant that's called a Swiffer grant. We did not receive that Swiffer grant, so we will not be building a building at this time. So we're really just talking about site prep, and bringing some utilities to the site and doing some associated planning of where exactly to site that within the Lemon Creek gravel pit. So that's what we're really, that's what we're going to get with the $2.5 million is really more of the construction piece. The question that I'm asking you today is not about the construction piece. It's about the operation when it's already been constructed. So that operating cost is not covered by that CDS. Any method that we use in terms of selecting a contractor will require competition. And at a really high level, the procurement mechanisms that we have available to us are a request for proposal, and there are some variations on that at a high level, but in a request for proposal, which is our standard mechanism, especially when we're looking for more of a service, but we do it for construction all the time as well. CBJ has more control. And I use I think the example here for the RFP when we think about the operation of Recycle Works. So that was done via an RFP. We established the days that it'll be open, the hours that it'll be open, the cost of the service. It's very prescriptive. That's what you get in the RFP. But it's more standard. We're like, right, we know how to do that. We write those all day long. There's also the option for a competitive lease, and this is much more hands-off. We do this much less frequently, but it's not completely unknown to us. As I mentioned last time, we have a model for that with Juneau Compost right now. So that's more of a mechanism where it looks like clearly CBJ can say, this land is to be used for compost, because we just made all these, we'd have to do that because that's what we promised that we would do after using this federal money. So we'd have strings like that, like it needs to be compost, but we are not setting days, hours, prices. We're not doing the advertising. We are not, sort of strategizing on, how to get more commercial users or those sorts of things. It's much more hands-off for CBJ. And at this time, you can see, I recommended that we do we go with a leasing option for no longer than 5 years. Part of the reason I'm recommending this more hands-off option is that we also have this other process that we talked about. We're doing all these other things. We're doing waste characterization, which I'll give you the results at the next meeting, but we've got the waste characterization study going. We did an RFP process to get a consultant to help us with this. I kind of think of it as the next steps question. What do we do when the landfill fills up? The landfill is guaranteed to fill up one day. What does the day after look like? And we have to start preparing for that now. I think that as a community, what we envision our big picture waste picture to look like after the landfill fills up is probably the most important waste question as I see it at this moment. And I think we need to know some more of those details before we would get really prescriptive about composting and RFP. But timing-wise, we're going to get this money to prepare this site before we have explored those questions and gotten to some of those big picture policy answers. So I think that that's why my recommendation is sort of in the shorter term, not to exceed this 5 years to do a competitive lease.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Koch. Questions from the committee? Mr. Kelly, we'll go to you.
Thank you. I was noticing in your memo, I thought it was interesting that you were recommending the competitive lease, but you were also saying, well, I think this was in your memo perhaps to JCOS, which you've included in here, that you also say that the lease option also potentially restricts us from federal funding. So I was just wondering if you could speak to that, or.
Through the chair to Mr. Kelly, we would not be able to get federal dollars to subsidize a private operation, essentially. So most of the grants that we've seen are really about capital. They seem to be about building things. There are some grants, and we'll talk about, like even the Lemon Creek grants that we've gotten so far, are not about building things, they're about planning. So there are also planning grants. I think it's less likely that there would be an opportunity to get federal funding for operations. But if there were such an opportunity, I think it's unlikely that we'd be able to apply for it because it wouldn't be a CBJ operation. It would be a private or nonprofit, whoever is the successful bidder, they would be the ones operating it.
Ms. Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for that question, Mr. Kelly. I had flagged. Similarly, when we think of like going for the Swiffer grant, then the idea of something like not being able to apply that in future years makes me say, ooh, like, I'm not so sure about that. You putting it in the context of what your recommendation in the context of all these other moving pieces we have in the world of waste, I was wondering if you could speak to a little bit, one thing that's a little bit less attractive about leasing to me is what keeps coming up in those moving pieces is that we don't have control of our waste stream. And so much of when we do these like characterizations or we are talking about next step, getting control of our waste stream is super important, and compost is part of that because we know it's going to fill up. So could you just speak about how you reconcile those two pieces?
Director Koch.
Yes, through the chair. Thank you for that question, Ms. Hughes Standies. And I've had these struggles myself as well. I think for the first part of your question, if there was a Swiffer grant, once again, that would be for construction. So maybe we could still apply for it because ultimately CBJ would own the facility, just like we own the land. Just don't think that we probably won't be as competitive for the construction. I don't think we'd ever get money for operations because that would, if we're leasing it, because we wouldn't be doing those operations. Probably we'd lose points in a competitive grant for a building, and we've already applied for one of those grants, and we obviously weren't competitive enough because we didn't get it. We applied for the Swiffer grant, and we didn't receive it. I think we could still make a case though that we would own the building. That's always ours. The second question, in some ways, is it's really the heart of the whole issue, and it's the harder question. You are right. I think the core waste problem that we have in this town is that we have so little control. The town, either consciously or through a series of independent decisions, we wound up in a system where we really privatized our waste. And that's really something that typically is a local government job. That's what local governments do, but that's not how we've structured it here. So I can, and that's part of why my vision was for like this finite time, this 5 years, because I could imagine a future where if Juneau decided to get control over its waste stream, and let's say part of that is waste collection, and then maybe the community would say, well, we control the waste collection and we'd like to have curbside compost, pickup, just like your garbage and your recycling pickup. A lot of those things in the community can make some of those decisions, and they could be more effective when we have a little bit more, we have control over either the collection of waste or the disposal of waste. So I think we'll get there at some point in time. I just think we're not quite there yet.
Thank you, Director Koch. I didn't think we were quite at a solution for our trash situation today. But you need a question. Do we want to pass on the RFP? What is the ask from Public Works and Facility Committee today?
So I would,
RFP or lease?
yes, RFP or lease, that is correct. Because it's really at its core a control question. Do we want this next 5 years to be a little bit more hands-off with this leasing option, where the operators they'd compete on, they'd have to make a pitch to us on who's going to provide the best service, and probably in some ways it's the reverse, who's going to give us the best lease rate, who's going to pay us the most money to use our land, versus an RFP, it's the opposite. We have to say, we say, oh, CBJ, we're going to control it. We're going to pay you to operate it in the way that we want you to operate it. Those are the differences.
Further questions from the committee? Mr. Kelly.
I have one more question. I don't know if this is the right time to ask it or if maybe down the road. But there is a third possible idea that I had. I was, again, I'm guilty of looking ahead, this time to the lands packet. And in that packet, there when we're talking about Telephone Hill, one of the options that's suggested is instead of request for proposals is a request for qualifications. I'm not, is there a reason, or have you had a chance to consider that as a possibility, and why might that have?
Director Koch.
Thank you.
Through the chair to Mr. Kelly. So a request for qualifications process ultimately still leads you to an RFP process. An RFP process is a much more standard process for us at the city. However, we do use those RFQ processes more rarely. I think it's appropriately recommended for Telephone Hill just because the project is, I mean, it's a major project with very big price tags and some different options, you know, some real meaty options that are different ways that you could do it. But even after we do, assuming that the assembly says, yes, go forth with an RFQ for Telephone Hill, ultimately after that, there will be an RFP. So it's still sort of, that's why at the 100,000 foot level, there's really like, there's an RFP process and there's a lease process. I don't think an RFQ process for composting would get us that much. It's just not as complicated as the Telephone Hill issue with all the various options.
Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Koch. It's a tricky question, and I really appreciate all your thoughts on it. I would move that the committee recommend that we go forward with an RFP process. And just to speak to it briefly, I think it is, if staff thinks you can do that for a RFP for 5 years, I understand the value of keeping it limited as you suggested, but it really does just, for me, get back to that control question, and 5 years is, I think, 25% of the time that until we're expecting it to fill up, if it doesn't fill up faster. So that would be what I move, and I request unanimous consent.
We've got Mr. Kelly and then Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you. I will object. I share Ms. Hughes Gandy's concern about control. I think ultimately some sort of RFP process is appropriate, but I did speak to the attorneys a little bit last week. It's my understanding that like a straight RFP process, basically we can put out some basic things, but after people meet kind of the basic qualifications, it's who is offering the best price. And so that's kind of why I brought up the request for qualifications, because at that point it's a competition, based off of, it's basically like interviewing somebody for a job, and then going for best price. So if we're not going to go with the lease, I think some sort of something that gives a little more control over who is qualified to do this service for us would be more appropriate. I think I'll let Ms. Atkinson speak, and then I might be moving an amendment.
Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am also going to object. I think overall, as a bigger picture for the city, we do want control of our waste stream. But from conversations I've had with staff and from this memo, I really seems like we're not in a place where control over this part of our waste stream really accomplishes that goal. And so right now, I think we should move forward with a lease instead, so that, that's less staff time, that's less time for CBJ. And we are only having it for 5 years, so that when we're more ready to have control and when it makes a bigger impact on our, our waste stream, then we can move that forward later. But I think for now, it makes more sense to move a competitive lease. And that's a whole other motion, not an amendment. So I'm not going to make one, but I would prefer we go with lease.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick follow-up question, because this is raising other questions in my head. So Director Koch, could you clarify, based on my read of the memo, doing a competitive lease is going to require more staff time because RFPs are your bread and butter, and you're going to have to reconcile that with the code? And then my other question would be, aren't both of these about who has the best price?
So through the chair to Ms. Hughes Candies, the first question is, you are correct, it's probably going to take us more time to do a competitive lease because we don't do that as often versus RFPs we're just doing all the time. We have a lot of experience with that. And then I think there is a price component on both of these. It's just in some ways it's the reverse. I think if we're doing an RFP for a service, then we're usually seeing who's providing the service we want and a service of quality at the best price, which is essentially the lowest price. Whereas if we're doing a competitive lease, since it's relatively hands-off, other than the fact it has to be composting there and maybe some high-level metrics, but it'll be pretty hands-off. We would need to make sure that somebody was qualified, to actually do that composting and had some track record of it in our type of environment. But I imagine it'll be the reverse. And then there's who is proposing to pay the most for that land. So there's a dollars competition on each of those. They're just a little bit inverse.
Thank you, Director Koch. Any additional questions? All right, so, go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
Not a question, but if you don't have a question, I'm ready to move my amendment.
I had something that I wanted to raise first. If we go with lease, we're pretty much saying we're going to go with what we're doing now as is, because we already have a lease with somebody who performs composting. So if we stay on the same course that we're on now, we will have the exact same level of composting. I think we have it's 2% is being diverted right now because we know what this lease produces for compostable material coming out of our landfill. So if we just go with a lease and stay as is, we will have zero additional composting taking place because the procedures and costs that are already set up will remain in place. And as long as we keep expecting the customer to pay $20 per 5-gallon bucket of composting, you're going to have a very limited customer base. You're never going to get restaurants because you cannot expect restaurants to pay an additional wages to then separate the compost out and then pay additional costs to throw extra trash away on top of the price that they already paid. It's why composting hasn't taken off yet. So if we want to really see composting increase in the community, we do need to do an RFP because we need to do something more than what we're doing now. And if we go with the lease, we're just going to get the exact same amount of composting that we've gotten for the last 3 years. And I think it's only removing 2% out of our landfill. If we do an RFP, we could move that needle for real. That's why I was going to recommend the RFP as opposed to a current lease where we already know what the outcome of that one is. But Mr. Kelly, I'll go ahead and do your motion.
Thank you. I move to amend Ms. Hughes Candy's motion so that we are recommending to the, I guess, was it to the full assembly or to the cow? Okay. Direction to staff to move forward with a request for qualifications process.
I'm going to object.
Would I be able to speak to it?
Go ahead.
It's actually, go ahead.
All right. All right. Ms. Hughes Candy, did you want to speak? Object. And I pretty much just spoke to it prior to that. Ms. Atkinson, do you want to weigh in here?
I object to this. I would prefer at least not a qualifications.
All right. So you've heard Mr. Kelly's motion. There are objections. We'll go ahead and call the question. Is that you, Ms. Hendricks? Mr. Kelly had an amendment. We had objection. I'm going to call the question for the amendment for Mr. Kelly to add a RFQ. Did you not have us discussing a motion? Okay, so Ms. Hughes Candy's had a motion, and could you just restate your motion? All right. What was your motion, Ms. Hughes Candy? Go ahead, could you repeat it?
My motion was to direct staff to proceed with an RFP.
Okay, Mr. Kelly then did a motion to amend to an RFQ. We had objection to that. I was calling the question on the amendment.
Okay, so we're calling a vote.
I hope you are. Yeah.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes Candies?
No.
Chair Bryson?
No.
Ms. Atkinson?
No.
Motion did not pass.
That brings us back to the original motion for an RFP. Are there any objections? Mr. Kelly, did you want to speak to it?
No, I'll just object.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So we've had, you've heard the motion. We have objection. We'll call the question on this one.
Mr. Kelly?
No?
Ms. Hughes Candies?
Yes.
Chair Bryson?
Yes.
Ms. Atkinson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Hendricks. All right, so that is compost facility procurement. We are 10 minutes past our time. Is everybody okay? All right, so cover the last item for action, the U.S. DOT Reconnecting Communities Neighborhoods Planning. Director Koch.
Yes, thank you, and I'll try and be brief, but it's always good to end the meeting on good news. I think this will be a lot easier than the last issue. So big picture, this is about Lemon Creek Multimodal Path. Behind this one-page request where we ultimately ask you to request an appropriation ordinance, behind there we wanted to provide you with a bigger sort of picture of what we're trying to do in Lemon Creek. And we thought that that would be helpful. But one thing to remember, this is an additional grant. Much like our other grant, it's just for planning dollars. It's not for construction dollars yet, but we have to do the planning and design to get to that later step. This is, of course, something the Lemon Creek Multimodal Path has been a part of, Lemon Creek Community's plan. The Systemic Racism Review Committee likes this. It's ranked highly in previous legislative capital priorities. So that's sort of the big picture. The specific question for you today is just on page 17 and asking for an appropriation for the $653,520 for Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods program from the USDOT Federal Highway Administration, and asked to forward that to the full assembly.
Excellent, thank you, Director Koch. Questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yay! We love good news. I would move that we forward a appropriating ordinance for $653.520 to the, let me try that again. That we forward an appropriating ordinance for $653,520 as match for the Reconnecting Communities grant. And I ask for unanimous consent.
You've heard the motion. Are there any objections? Seeing none, that is so approved. All right. Director Koch, you just want to give us a quick information on CBJ grant strategies or any PWFC milestones or?
Yes. I'll just give you the update on grants, because that's where it's most substantive, and also great way to end a meeting on amazing news. You'll see from Ms. Heimbigner's memo, we at CBJ have spent a lot of time pursuing federal grant dollars. And we're very lucky to have a wonderful grants manager along with all the subject matter experts that participate in these grants. But you could see that for this time period where we're looking at, approximately 2 fiscal years, we're talking about $21 million in grant funds for 9 projects. So I just wanted to show you that effort is bearing fruit. As you might remember, the grants manager position is a relatively new position. We've only had Ms. Heimbigner for a little over a year, and she's done great work. And you could see on page, on page 24, where you have the table, that everything that's in yellow that's what's new from what you've seen last time. And the big dollar amount is this bus and bus facilities program grant that we just found out about, I think that was last week, for this $11.86 million. It's for 6 new electric buses and associated charging infrastructure. That would really, it's also meant explicitly to replace the Proterra bus, which hasn't worked. So we'd really be adding 5 new buses to our fleet, because that's in addition to, you might also remember that we've been talking about these 7 electric Gillig buses. That's from a grant that we previously won, and we have already placed an order for those buses, and we're hoping to get those buses in about the fall of this year. There's a really long lead time between the purchase and the buses getting up here. So this is really 5 new electric buses, which is really exciting.
Yay. Everybody's happy to get 11.6 million worth of new electric buses. Any comments or questions for the good of the order? Director Koch, any last words?
One last item I just wanted to mention. June 3rd, we talked about the lead service line inventory, and we sent out postcards to everyone's home, but we were remiss in posting it prominently on our website. So I know how that goes. You come home from work, you're busy, you remember it, but maybe you recycled it. We have extended the deadline. It was originally supposed to be 7/19. We've extended that deadline to August 2nd, and now we have it tiled really prominently on the juno.org homepage. You'll see it. So if you haven't done that yet and we're looking for where to find it, it's very prominent.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Director Koch. We are adjourned at 1:28.